Welcome to the Martin Bailey Photography Podcast. It's the first day of 2018 and this is episode 602. As 2017 drew to an end, I completed my yearly exercise of selecting my personal favourite top 10 images from the year. And as has become a tradition, I'm going to share my process with you today. As usual, I started this exercise by creating a group in the library area of my Capture One Pro catalogue called 2017 Top 10, and then created an album initially called First Pass and made that my selects collection so that I can just hit the shortcut that I've defined, in my case the Q key, to add images to my collection. Because I have all the images that I felt were worth a hoot in my 2017 folder in my finals catalogue, it's easy to go through and select images that I'd like to consider to my First Pass folder. I like to do this each year because it helps us to be objective as we evaluate our images, making us better at editing down a selection. If we keep in mind that all of the images in my 2017 folder are there because I like them, it's actually really easy to just want to drop them all into my First Pass folder. But then I'd just be duplicating my 2017 folder. I know that I have to whittle this down to just 10 images, so you start to think about whether or not each image has a chance of staying in the selection even before you hit the shortcut key. By doing one more tour than previous years, I actually finished 2017 with 1,052 images in my finals folder. Also, having switched to Capture One Pro in June 2016, 2017 was the first year that I processed the entire year exclusively in Capture One Pro, which means that there are now very few images in my finals folder that represent a base RAW image that I worked on with a plugin. When I work on an image in, say, Photoshop or in the past in the Nik collection, I used to save the original RAW file and the edited TIFF or PSD file in my finals folder. In 2016, for example, 78 of my 928 final selections were duplicates because I had saved both the TIFF and original RAW file for a number of images from the first half of the year before I switched to Capture One Pro. By comparison, this year I have just 8 TIFFs and 1 PSD file, so 1,043 images are original, meaning that I have approximately 200 more original images to choose from over the previous year. I'd like to think that the quality of the work is still increasing gradually too, and this is something that this process helps us to keep tabs on. I also feel that for sure, looking through a full year of Capture One Pro images, that Capture One has helped me to raise the bar again, image quality-wise. I'm still very happy with my decision to switch from Lightroom and have no intention of switching to any other RAW processing software for at least the foreseeable future. I still have all of my top 10 selections as collections in my finals catalogue, so I can easily go back and review previous years, and it's always fun to do that just to see how you're doing. It's also interesting to see how my tastes have changed over the years. There are some images that I see in old top 10 sets that I wouldn't include now, even though they may still have merit as a photograph. They just don't appeal to me anymore like they did when I initially selected them to represent my year's work. I also found that work from my Snow Monkeys and Hokkaido tours is finding its way into my shortlists much less often. I guess this is a luxury I'm afforded by the fact that I've now visited these locations so many times that I've pretty much shot everything in previous years, and anything that I add to my list at this point has to exceed my previous work. That's partly why I still love going, because I'm constantly challenging myself to better my old work. But that gets more and more difficult each year, especially when I have no control over the conditions and what the animals might do in those conditions. For example, I found myself selecting only a couple of Stellar Sea Eagle shots in which I'd captured something that I'd not seen or shot before. My snow monkeys shots were really difficult too, because I didn't really have anything so special that I felt compelled to drop it into my first pass. I also surprised myself a little with a powerful realization that a lot of my wildlife work from the Etosha National Park in Namibia was screaming out to be converted to black and white. I'd always thought of that work in color, but when I went back through my images during this exercise, I felt that the color in some ways was getting in the way, so I converted it to black and white. This worked mostly with my zebra shots, which are already black and white animals, but I found some of the wildebeest shots worked well in black and white as well. After spending a few hours going through my 1,000+ images, I had a collection of 97 images, so just under 10%. I guess 1 in 10 from my final selections for the year isn't too bad. I could have been more brutal, but this was a good start. I also at this point found myself being hit by a deep sense of gratitude to have been able to visit the locations I have in my work. I've included in the blog post a screenshot showing my initial selection, and it humbles me to see what I've been able to photograph this year. If you're not already on the blog looking at these images, or you find that even though you can see the image on your iOS device in the enhanced podcast, if you want to go and look at the images in full size, and I've actually included relatively large screenshots, please do go over to the blog at mbp.ac/602. To start my second pass, I created another album and added the 97 images from the first pass. I could just continue to whittle down my first selection, but I like to keep tabs on what I selected and how I whittled it down by keeping my working collections. Once inside my second pass album, it's now a case of hitting delete to remove images from the collection instead of adding them as I did in the first pass. Although it helps to select similar images and identify the best of each group, I find that on my second pass it's often easy to remove a chunk of other images now that I have a holistic view of my selection just by going through and feeling my reaction to the images. I start to instinctively know that some images just aren't going to make it, especially when I consider that I have to remove another 9 out of 10 images. It's just easier to do this having just gone through the images. It took only 5 minutes to go through and remove another 46 images, getting me down to 51 at the end of my second pass. So, with another 4 out of 5 to remove, I copied my selection again to a new collection called Third Pass and quickly removed another 22 images, but then I was stuck. I was down to 24 that I absolutely wanted to leave in. This is when it starts to get difficult. Still having to more than half my selection, the obvious place to look at is the 3 camel shots. I definitely wanted to keep the photo of the camel handler with his animals against the dunes, and perhaps one of the sunset shots, so I removed one of the camel shots where they were bunched up a little bit, as I prefer the spacing of the shot with the sunset just in the bottom left corner. I also don't need 3 zebra shots, so I looked at all 3 together and initially removed the color shot and continued to deliberate over which of the two black and white shots to keep. I also removed the Namibia silhouette shot from the Quiver Tree Forest. I like that shot a lot, but I have to start making some hard choices. I really like the shot with the cranes in the mist too, but I've had similar to those over the years, so that's gone. I also removed the shot of the lioness looking out across the plain, as although I love that shot, it's not as impactful for someone that wasn't there to look at. I then realized that I still had 11 shots from Morocco, and that has to be partly because this is my most recent work. So there's still a strong emotional connection that is probably preventing me from getting ruthless. As I've mentioned in previous years, this is a good illustration of the importance of giving yourself some time to live with your work before making important editing decisions. It's much harder to cut the cord until you have some time between the shoot and when you edit your selection. I removed the Blue City shot as I don't feel it is as strong as my emotional attachment makes me feel. I removed the other zebra shot, leaving just one, with the zebras at the waterhole. Still having 7 images to remove, I deleted the Namibia dunes with the stormy sky shot because there's a line of ground in the bottom right foreground that annoys me. Having 3 close-up shots from Namibia, I decided to remove the man in the blue turban and the man with the dark red background. This was a hard decision, but at this point, I'm shooting children. If it comes to this, I guess my mostly orange dune shot from Namibia has to go too. Down to 13, I decided to use my secret weapon, my wife. She's my trusted critique, and although she's not a photographer, she has a good eye and a sense of the aesthetic. So I loaded my selection onto my iPad Pro and went downstairs to solicit her advice. We don't always agree on the selection, but I trust her opinion more than my own sometimes, and it's usually the best way forward. For example, I recently shared my Morocco work on Instagram and found that of the 2 photographs of the camel handlers in the dunes that were still left in my selection, the one with the red of the sunset in the bottom left-hand corner got significantly more likes than the one with the dunes in the background. And as you might imagine, my wife chose the sunset shot over the dunes shot. Personally, I could go either way on this. I think there is a classical appeal in the dunes and camel shot, but the sunset shot has more impact. Now, I want to stress that Instagram likes are not important to me from an ego perspective, but when trying to make a decision as to what to leave in, it can be a good indicator to bear in mind. It's good information, but it's my own personal favorite top 10. So I started to deliberate as to whether or not I should simply leave in both camel train shots. They're different enough for that to be okay, but what else could I remove? We also decided to remove the photo of the mosque because although I like it a lot, I find the fact that the rest of the town around the mosque is a little busy sort of reduces my overall satisfaction with the photo, so that was removed. Also, the young musician from the Oasis in Morocco is a nice shot, but it's not as artistic as the other portraits, so we removed that too. I started this exercise on Friday the 29th of December and actually sat on the final selection for 2 days. Sometimes a bit of time is necessary to enable that last decision. But sometimes, especially if you're a working photographer, you don't always have time. Sometimes we have to whittle down our selection quickly, and that is why I find this exercise so useful, especially if you don't do tight edits of your work regularly. This gets you accustomed to making tough decisions. I had the luxury this time of spending 2 more days and decided to keep both camel train shots and remove the black and white zebra shot. Although I like that image, especially now it's in black and white, It's easier to cut from the selection, as I can't believe it's better than either of my Camel Train shots, so it's gone. With that, we now have my final top 10 selection for 2017. It's a bit Morocco heavy, with 6 out of the 10 images from there, but I think that's really only natural, as it was my first visit to Morocco and I have many images that are new and fresh to me. Of course, part of this is also because Morocco was only just over a month ago, but I have tried to be objective and base my decisions on the artistic merit of each image, rather than the fact that the memory of the trip is still fresh in my mind. This is another thing that I believe doing this exercise helps with. I'll talk about each image in next week's podcast and blog post, so please tune in for that as well if you'd like to hear a little more about each of the images. As usual, I also invite you to decide on your own top 10 images for 2017. Don't make it more if at all possible. 12 is a nice number, matching the number of months of the year, and it's your choice, of course. But what you need to avoid is starting to look for 10 and then increasing it to 12 or 15 because you find it difficult to whittle down your selection. This is supposed to be difficult, or there isn't much benefit in doing it. Also, try to be objective. Don't keep a shot of your grandmother or your cat in your top 10 unless it's an absolutely beautiful photo with great light, etc. I'm using grandmothers and cats as a generic example, of course. The point is, your family are special to you, but not to anyone else unless it's a beautiful image. So please do try to be objective and make some really difficult decisions. And then when you have completed this task, please do share a link in the comments on the blog post at mbp.ac/602. Some of you have been doing this every year, and I always look forward to seeing your selections, and I absolutely welcome any newcomers too. Try to keep a record of your selections if possible. This enables you to go back and compare your work to previous years over time, and that helps you to check that you're getting better each year. I have all of my previous top 10 selections in Capture One Pro still, and they are all still available as blog posts. And I've put a link to that in the show notes. Of course, there will be years when you'll visit somewhere amazing and produce work that stands out more than other work. But remember that helps us to ratchet up as photographers. It's important to learn from the highlights and not become bogged down by the feeling that other work closer to home can feel a little mundane. I talked about this in my Evolution of the Photographer post back in 2014. So I look forward to seeing your selections and a happy new year to you. I hope 2018 brings everything you hope for and more. Thanks very much for listening today, and indeed throughout 2017 and earlier. If you enjoy this podcast, please share a link with your friends. Subscribe in iTunes or your favorite podcast program to ensure uninterrupted delivery. If you have a moment to rate the podcast or leave us a review in iTunes, that helps to keep us relevant in the huge number of podcasts out there now. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Google+, and links to everything that I'm up to are at martinbaileyphotography.com, so do drop by and take a look. I'll be back next week with another episode, but in the meantime, you take care and have a great week, whatever you're doing. Bye-bye.